Russia began the war with an elite air squadron of 12 modern fighter jets in Crimea, and it has since lost more than half of them. Its Crimean jet fleet is on the brink of total defeat. This is another humiliating loss for Russia and another big victory for Ukraine, and it's a story that stretches all the way back before the full-scale invasion began to the 2014 annexation of Crimea. After forcefully taking over the peninsula, Moscow deployed its 43rd Naval Attack Aviation Regiment to the area. The regiment was based at the occupied Saki airfield, just outside of the city of Saki on Crimea's western coast. It was equipped with some Sukhoi Su-24 bombers and a dozen Su-30 SM fighter jets. Those jets are some of the best in the entire Russian arsenal. They're based on the original Su-30, which was developed in the Soviet Union in the 1980s to replace older Cold War era jets like MiG-29s and Su-27s, and first flew in 1989. The Su-30 proved popular, with special variants manufactured and exported to various countries around the world. One of those variants was the Su-30 MKI, or Modernized Commercial Indian, a specially made Su-30 for the Indian Air Force. Designed in conjunction with Indian defense company Hindustan Aeronautics, the Su-30 MKI essentially combined the best elements from multiple jets, including the Su-30, Su-27 and Su-37, creating a next-level Su-30 with advanced avionics, superior sensors and more powerful weaponry than the baseline model. The Su-30 MKI is now the primary air superiority fighter in the Indian Air Force, and Russia was so satisfied with this variant that it decided to make some for itself, with a new name of the Su-30 SM. Classed as a 4+ generation fighter, the Su-30 SM is one of the most versatile fighter jets Russia has ever made. It boasts numerous advantages over its predecessors, and while it can't quite match some of the best American jets, and has since been surpassed by other Russian models like the Su-57, it's still a formidable aerial force. It boasts a high-end N011M BARS radar system, for example, which can help it spot and identify targets up to 250 miles away, plus frontal horizontal fins and steerable thrusters, which grant the Su-30 SM strong levels of maneuverability in the air to evade enemy weapons and win dogfights. It can be equipped with a wide array of armaments too, including air-to-air, air-to-surface, and both guided and unguided bombs, with a maximum payload of over 17,000 pounds. It also boasts smart protection systems to enhance survivability and electronic warfare capabilities too. In short, the Su-30 SM is an integral piece of Russia's aerial arsenal, and when it positioned a sizable fleet of these jets in Crimea, the Kremlin can never have imagined how many of them it would end up losing. It most likely assumed that the jets will be a strong deterrent against any Ukrainian attacks or military maneuvers in the peninsula. Instead, they became a target, and the first loss came less than 2 weeks into the invasion, on March 5, 2022. A Su-30 SM was shot from the skies by Ukraine's armed forces and crash-landed in Ukraine's Mykolaiv region. The pilot and navigator both ejected, survived, and were captured by the Ukrainians. One was identified as Major Oleksiy Golovensky, the commander of the aviation squadron at the time. A few months later, on 9 August 2022, Russia's Crimean fighter jet fleet took an even bigger hit. Out of nowhere, a series of huge explosions rang out around Saki Air Base. Blasts of fire and clouds of smoke filled the air, as though the entire base was being blown up from within. Early reports mentioned 3 or 4 explosions, but that number later rose to 6, 7, and even up to 15 in some reports. The Russians quickly declared a state of emergency, before going on to claim that the explosions were the result of an accident. People were seen panicking and fleeing the area, and local residents had to be rushed to emergency shelters as the full scale of the damage was revealed. 5 Su-24 jets were destroyed that day, along with 3 Su-30 SMs. Another Su-30 SM was damaged in the attack, and 3 more Su-24s were believed to have been damaged, according to media reports and satellite imagery of the airfield. Ukraine didn't take responsibility for the strike right away. Instead, its defense ministry joked online, warning Russians about fire safety rules and the prohibition of smoking in unspecified places. But it didn't take long for military analysts and experts to assess the footage and satellite images and figure out that this was most likely a precise, targeted attack rather than a random accident. Some sources suggested that Ukraine must have launched US-made MGM-140 ATACMS missiles into Saki, or that Ukraine had used its own Atrim-2 ballistic missiles or R-360 Neptune cruise missiles. Various theories and ideas emerge, but none were confirmed until early September 2022, when Ukraine's commander-in-chief at the time, Valery Zaluzhny, admitted that Ukraine's armed forces were indeed responsible for the strike. Zaluzhny confirmed that Ukraine had used its own domestic weapons in the attack, taking 10 Russian warplanes out of action in the process. He added that the attack had not only damaged Russia's military capabilities, but was also designed to challenge the Kremlin's confidence and sense of impunity to prove that Ukraine was ready and able to strike back and deal serious damage of its own. It was one of the biggest and most successful Ukrainian attacks of the early stages of the war, and almost a precursor to later attacks like the iconic Operation Spiderweb Strike, which took place earlier this year and involved Ukrainian drones striking no less than 4 Russian airfields all on the same day. So, mere months into its invasion, Russia had already lost 4 of its 12 Su-30SMs in Crimea, with the 5th seriously damaged and in need of repair. But Ukraine didn't stop there. On September 11, 2024, a Russian Su-30SM fighter jet simply seemed to disappear near the city of Sevastopol, shortly after launching a missile strike on the Ukrainian port city of Odessa. Open-source intelligence analysts tracking Russian planes shared the news on Telegram, writing, "Yesterday, at around 11:40 p.m, an enemy Su-30SM tactical aircraft disappeared over the Black Sea after launching Kh-31P missiles over the Odessa region. Today, rescue and search operations are underway at the site of his disappearance, 39 miles from the Zalizny port. There was no information about the 2 crew members, and it's likely that they both did not survive." Soon after, the truth behind this mysterious disappearance was revealed. A special unit of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, GUR, brought the jet down with the aid of a man-portable air defense system, or MANPADS, as reported in a GUR press release. During the operation in the Black Sea, the soldiers of the special unit of the DIU of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine destroyed the Russian Su-30SM combat aircraft using the MANPADS. The fighter, which fell into the sea, belonged to the 43rd Separate Naval Aviation Regiment of the Russian Federation, which is based on the airfield of the city of Saki in the temporarily occupied Crimea. The occupiers lost contact with their combat board on September 11, 2024 at about 5 a.m. Approximately 3 hours later, the Russians launched a search and rescue operation involving the AN-26 aircraft, as well as the Mi-8 and Ka-27 helicopters. At lunchtime, the invaders reported to the command about the despicable in the sea, about 43 miles northwest of Cape Tahankut, a characteristic stain from aviation fuel, and soon saw the wreckage of the destroyed Su-30SM. The cost of such an aircraft is approximately $50 million. The next loss came earlier this year, on May 2nd, and this one was particularly special. Early in the day, news outlets and social media channels reported that a Russian aircrew had ended up in the waters of the Black Sea and had to be saved by a civilian cargo ship in the wake of a Ukrainian drone attack. It wasn't known at the time what aircraft they were from or what exactly had happened to them, but the details soon emerged and the world was shocked to learn the truth. It turned out that the Russians had been aboard a Sukhoi Su-30 fighter jet, which was taken out by Ukrainian Magura maritime drone. It was the first time ever, anywhere in the world, that a water-based drone successfully brought down a warplane, and it was another incredible example of Ukrainian innovation and ingenuity winning the day. The Magura drone was operated by a special unit of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, working in conjunction with Ukrainian Defense Forces and the Ukrainian Security Service, as explained in a GUR Telegram post. For the first time in the world, GUR soldiers destroyed an enemy combat aircraft with a strike from a Magura naval drone. On May 2, 2025, the special unit of the GUR of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, in cooperation with the SBU and the Defense Forces of Ukraine, eliminated a Russian Su-30 in the Black Sea. This is the first destruction of a combat aircraft by a naval drone in the world. The historic strike was carried out by soldiers of the Special Forces Unit of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry Group 13 with a Magura unmanned maritime platform missile. The multi-role fighter of the aggressor state of Russia, whose estimated cost is about $50 million, burst into flames in the air and eventually fell into the sea, to the bottom of the possessions of the ruthless Neptune. The successful strike on an enemy combat aircraft took place in the waters near the port in the city of Novorossiysk, where the Muscovites are hiding the remains of their Black Sea fleet. We will remind you that on December 31, 2024, thanks to the Magura V5 missile sea drone, special forces of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry's Air Defense Forces for the first time in the world destroyed an aerial target, 2 Russian Mi-8 helicopters. This not only weakened Russia's Crimean jet fleet further, but also proved that Ukraine's maritime drones were far more capable and powerful than analysts had initially expected. The most recent Su-30 SM loss came mere days ago, on August 15, when Ukraine's naval intelligence intercepted Russian radio communications, confirming the loss of contact with a Su-30 SM during a mission around Snake Island in the Black Sea. In a Telegram post, the naval forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine wrote, "The intelligence assets of the Ukrainian Navy have received a radio interception about the loss of contact with the Russian invaders' Su-30 SM aircraft, which was performing a mission southeast of Zmyny Island. The aircraft probably crashed for unknown reasons. The occupiers are currently conducting a search and rescue operation. According to available information, wreckage of the plane was found on the surface of the sea. The pilots have not yet been identified." That brings the final tally of destroyed Su-30 SMs from the Crimean fleet to 7, with 2 more damaged. One in the aforementioned Saki airbase attack in 2022 and another in a drone strike on Saki in July of this year. In addition, numerous other Su-30s and additional Russian fighter jets have been damaged and destroyed in other areas over the course of the war so far. In April of this year, for instance, Ukraine's military intelligence agency reported of a successful sabotage strike on a military airfield near the Russian city of Rostov-on-Don, leaving a Su-30 SM multi-role fighter in flames. Enemy Su-30 SM aircraft destroyed in Russia. Opposition to Putinism is growing. Another action of resistance to the criminal Putin regime in Russia on the territory of the Rostov-on-Don central airfield, an aggressor's multi-role fighter Su-30 SM with tail number 35 caught fire and burned down. The estimated cost of the destroyed enemy aircraft is $50 million. Firstly, there's the cost aspect. As stated, Su-30 SM fighter jets do not come cheap. These are extremely expensive aircraft, with each one worth up to $50 million. In taking out 7 of them in Crimea, Ukraine has left the Kremlin with a whopping $350 million bill. This is more important now than ever before, as the Russian economy is edging ever closer to a state of absolute ruin. The country's president, Vladimir Putin, has recklessly poured huge sums of money into his invasion of Ukraine, drawing cash out of Russia's National Wealth Fund in the process. The National Wealth Fund was valued in excess of $180 billion before the invasion began, but by early 2025, it had dropped to just $35 billion, showing just how costly this conflict has been. Funds have been used for various purposes, like buying Shahed drones from allies like Iran, striking deals with North Korea to bolster the Russian ranks, handing out huge cash payouts to new recruits in order to compensate for the colossal number of casualties the country suffered, and building entire new military production plants, churning out kamikaze drones, fighter jet components, glide bombs and more. Russia is spending more than it can afford, as proven by recent statements from Russian financial leaders warning of a major recession unless the country changes course. Even Putin has been forced to admit defeat in the financial domain, promising that the country's defense expenditure will come down in 2026. In the meantime, the average Russian faces a tougher life than ever before, with the cost of many everyday essentials more than doubling. So when Russia loses hugely expensive pieces of military equipment, be they radar stations, tanks, air defense systems, or $50 million Su-30 SM fighter jets, those losses take a major toll. They weaken the country's economy even further, and while Russia can produce more jets to replace those it's lost, it can't afford to do so forever. The costs are simply spiraling out of control, and the losses aren't slowing down, as Ukraine has already damaged and destroyed several Su-30s this year alone. The destruction of Su-30 SMs also undermines Russia's military confidence and control, which is particularly important in a place like Crimea. Russia has held the peninsula for over a decade now, and the Kremlin clearly believes it will maintain control over Crimea for years to come. But Ukraine clearly takes a very different view. While defending cities along the front lines and fighting valiantly in areas like Donetsk, Luhansk, Kharkiv and Kherson, the Ukrainian army has also found time to launch numerous strikes on Crimea over the course of the conflict so far. It sought to liberate the peninsula bit by bit, weakening Russia's position there and letting the Kremlin know it cannot simply hold on to that land uncontested. Indeed, very early on in the war, the first attacks began on targets like the Kerch Bridge, which joins mainland Russia to the Crimean peninsula. The former Ukrainian Major General of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Dmitry Marchenko, even called the bridge one of Ukraine's primary targets at the time, saying, "The Kerch Strait Bridge is target number one for the Ukrainian Armed Forces. This is not a secret either for their military or for our military, neither for their civilians nor for our civilians." Ukraine has also launched missile and drone attacks at key military targets across Crimea, like the September 2023 Operation Crab Trap attack, which involved Storm Shadow cruise missiles being fired at Sevastopol to destroy the HQ of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, or the 2024 attacks on air bases in Zankoy and Belbek, wiping out more expensive pieces of military hardware like MiG-31 fighter jets. All of this helps to boost Ukrainian morale, demonstrate the country's fortitude and military capabilities, and humiliate Russia time after time. But by far the most important benefit of Ukraine bringing down and blowing up Russia's high-end fighter jets is quite simply the fact that it undoubtedly saves lives and makes the country just that little bit safer. As discussed during the introduction of this video, Su-30SMs are strong and versatile fighter jets, capable of carrying out air-to-air or air-to-ground attacks. They carry massive payloads, drop guided bombs, and fire destructive missiles, leaving death and devastation in their wake, and they've been used on numerous occasions over the course of the war so far to kill Ukrainian people and destroy pieces of the country's infrastructure. Russia has also used its Su-30SMs to launch Kh-31P and Kh-58 anti-radiation missiles in order to suppress and overwhelm Ukraine's air defenses, making it easier for drones and other missiles to bypass those defenses and successfully strike their targets. The more of these jets Ukraine can take out, blow up or ground, the harder it is for Russia to plan and launch more of those deadly destructive bombing runs, missile strikes and lethal drone swarms. And that means less damage done and fewer lives lost in the long run. Now, with a shrinking fleet of aircraft at its disposal, fewer trained pilots and operators to use jets effectively, and an increasingly battered and bruised economy, Russia is facing total defeat in the skies. Meanwhile, Ukraine has strengthened its aerial forces, like French Mirage 2005s and American F-16s from its allies across the NATO alliance. Ukraine has also been investing and innovating in the field of electronic warfare in order to blunt Russia's aerial offensives even more, setting up a massive wall of static to send Shahed drones spiraling out of the skies, and engineering low-cost domestic equipment to make Russia's glide bombs miss their targets almost every time. You can learn more about these amazing innovations and recent successes in our latest videos. And don't forget to subscribe to our trusted channel so you don't miss out on even more fascinating news, uplifting developments, and hard-hitting reporting from the front lines of the Ukraine-Russia war.